Yeah, today we'll just be taking you through the latest regulations around influencer marketing with Rupa Shah. So if we go on to talk about a little bit about Freestak. So in case you aren't aware, obviously some of you that we can see on right now are aware of who we are, but we are an online platform that allows brands to connect with content creators and influencers within the endurance and outdoor sports sector. And our community is made up of 1,800 influencers within our network, with a combined reach of 32 million across their platforms. Again, this is just a snapshot of some of our clients, which we have worked with in the past and do work with currently. And just a little bit about our history. Our founders, Julie and Simon, saw a bit of a boom in influencer marketing when it first became a popular vertical to integrate into media plans years ago. There was a bit of a gap in the market where companies were manually using their resources to scroll and track through hundreds of content creator data across multiple campaigns. So this was obviously extremely time consuming and became a core challenge for brands. So Freestak developed a tech solution to combat this, to manage influencer marketing campaigns and remove the time-consuming function of manually searching across social to recruit and monitor. Obviously, our niche is in outdoor sports and endurance sector, and obviously that ensures that our pool of content creators remain authentic and obviously have a passion for this market and drive to produce good quality content for brands that they actually love. So then we obviously saw a bit of a turn in the tides, as many other companies were also offering data capture across Instagram and other social channels. However, what sets us apart is the fact that we can also track across multiple platforms such as Strava, YouTube and Twitter, for example. As we noticed, a lot of content creators had multiple campaigns across these platforms and were pushing a lot of their content over many different remits. We can also now track IG story data, which only a handful of other companies actually out there also allow to do. So now moving on to our agenda. So Rupa will be taking us through, obviously, a bit of an introduction about the company she works for, #Ad Consulting, a little bit about her professional history, and the industry regulations and rules, such as the remits that control them, such as the ASA, CMA, CAP, and FTC. Obviously, we'll be looking at a few common mistakes, which will probably be the most helpful part of this presentation, mainly across Instagram and across brand ambassadors. And then we'll touch on a few obvious points around the current climate of COVID-19. So I'll let Rupa now tell you a bit about herself and the company she works for.
Hi, thank you, Amy. Yes, I'm Rupa Shah. I am the founder and director of a company called #Ad Consulting. We've been around for a couple of years now, but prior to me founding #Ad Consulting, I was at the ASA. So everything to do with the #Ad Consulting is all about ad regulation. And I created this company to provide compliance training, essentially, to influencers, social media agencies, talent management teams, brands, tech platforms, basically anyone who's in the influencing space. Because as it turns out, the regulators would hold any of these people, potentially people or companies, responsible if things go wrong. So I realised that it was important to all of these people within the sphere to know what the regulations are and to feel like they're up to date in it. So obviously the main aim of being kept up to date is that you're going to avoid a ruling, a regulation, and be that by the ASA here in the UK, the FTC in America, or any of the European regulatory bodies. And the way we do this is by providing social media audits directly to influencers. So that would be searching through their channels to make sure that they are disclosing correctly, not using any claims that they shouldn't be making, just checking their competitions, affiliate links, that type of thing. I've also started creating some e-courses, which at the moment are aimed at influencers, but there will be some e-courses for brands coming up very soon. I provide for brands compliance guides and quarterly updates. So by compliance guide, this is like a how-to guide with the basic essentials that you really need to know about with your advertising. So all of the regulations that you need to think about when you're engaging an influencer and asking an influencer to create sponsored posts. Obviously, a guide doesn't stay up to date for very long, so I also provide quarterly updates, online training. And for more information, actually, I have a YouTube channel which I keep up to date with all of the relevant rules as they come in from the ASA. So yeah, it's another source of material if you are interested in what the ASA rulings are. A little bit about my background. Why do I do this? As I mentioned, I came from the ASA. I was there for 13 years and had a whole host of experience there because I worked in their investigations team, investigating road advertisers and advertisers who were doing nothing wrong as well, because not every ruling is an upheld ruling. Provided copy advice to brands because the ASA does have a service where they can give advice. It's a little bit trickier now in lockdown. There isn't as much staff and there's not as much access to quick advice, but it is something that they are committed to offer. And I also worked in the ASA compliance team. So this is important because I understand exactly what methods the ASA and their sister body CAP use to make sure that advertisers and influencers comply with their rulings. So it's not as simple as just fining. They've got lots of other techniques that they use. So #ad has been around since 2017, and I am the director and the brand compliance consultant. So we're going to go through these quite quickly because every single topic that I'm going to go through is probably a webinar in itself. But just to give you an idea of the regulatory regime, who you need to be thinking about, what regulators are out there. In the UK, we have two. We've got the CMA and the ASA. I talk about CAP as well, or CAP. They're the sister body to the ASA, and they don't conduct investigations. They're the body that provides advice to the industry and actually writes the code. So the code that I talk about, we'll be talking about, and the rules that I talk about, that's the CAP code. I've put in here a little bit about the FTC, primarily because it's really difficult to be a social media influencer in isolation in one country. The chances are, if you become successful, you will have viewers in other countries and you will have supporters, and potentially you might even be marketing to people in other countries. And that does mean that regulations from, for example, America will come into play, and you may need to know about them. You may think that purely because you're based in the UK or an influencer is based in the UK means that only UK rules apply. Well, that's just not the case. It is absolutely possible, and it has happened in the past, that somebody, for example, in the US will see a post by a social media influencer in the UK, but because they have potentially talked about something in dollars, or they've made their product easily available to someone in the US, it would be deemed by the US authorities that that influencer and that brand are advertising to American citizens, in which case you need to be following their rules and regulations as well. But as I said, whole other webinar on that, so I won't go into too much detail. We'll focus more on the UK. And the important things you think you'd probably need to know about in any sector, whether that is sports endurance or health and beauty, anything really, is that the main thing that ASA want to see, and the CMA, is that ads look like ads. They want to be able to differentiate between organic, authentic posts and posts that are sponsored. And it's a key tenet of their CAP code, which I mentioned earlier. And it's been in the code for over 50 years that ads should always look like ads. Before social media came about, there were lots of rulings about, for example, people putting up ads on cars that looked a bit like parking tickets. And, you know, it was to catch people's attention. It's a strange technique, but prior to sort of 2014, those were the kind of ads not looking like ads cases that we had to deal with. But now, of course, the problem is that an organic post looks very much the same as a sponsored post. So the ASA are focusing very heavily on trying to find those influencers and brands who are doing it wrong, whether that's deliberately or not. Also, where there are affiliate links and affiliate relationships, the ASA and CAP have said very clearly, and the CMA, that they need to be disclosed. So disclosure is not just about, you know, the simple put a post up for us, show our product, and bang, that's it, that's all we want. It can be the affiliate links, the swipe up on Instagram, that type of thing. So these types of relationships are commercial relationships, and the regulators expect you as the brand and the influencer to declare those and to make it very clear to everybody who's looking at your post that this is an advertising type relationship. There are also rules about the types of claims that are being made. So this is very specific to each sector. So where one sector might go very wrong, so for example, motoring, you might be making speed claims, whereas with endurance sports, you might be making claims to do with the efficacy of a product or the endurance of a product, that type of thing. So even with those types of claims, things can go wrong because you might be overstating the claim. You might be making a claim that yours is a number one type of product when actually a competitor says they're the number one. All of these things are things you need to think about, because as a social media influencer or a brand that's using social media influencers, they're all still relevant, as they would be with any other type of advertising. Another big thing that the ASA are looking at all the time are competitions and giveaways, primarily because it's actually quite hard to make sure you're getting in all the correct T's and C's. The ASA have produced loads of guidance about this. Now, the CAP Code has a whole section 8, on how you should be or what you should be including in your T's and C's when you run a competition and a giveaway. But it's not always easy to include everything they want you to include in a tiny, for example, Twitter post. So there is further guidance that they've produced for specific types of media. But the fact remains is that if you're going to get it wrong, you will be picked up on it because the ASA are monitoring. So although there might be a little bit of leeway, there are strict rules and conditions for competitions and giveaways that you should be aware of. So I thought it'd be helpful to go through the types of common mistakes that the ASA have ruled on in the last couple of months, or frequently over the last couple of years. And what we're seeing a lot of are mistakes using Instagram stories, primarily because I don't know whether there's a perception that these disappear very quickly. So is it necessary to include all of the ad disclosures that you might need to put into your feed? Well, the same rules apply. And what's happening with the ASA is that people are screenshotting and sending in complaints. Competitor influencers in the same niche are sending in complaints. So there's no real getting away with not disclosing. It doesn't matter what type of media you're using. There are people out there who are determined to complain, and they will complain. And those are valid complaints. The problem is it might seem malicious, but if it's a valid complaint and a disclosure is missing, then the ASA will investigate. So, for example, here you've got the swipe up for the top, and that's clearly it takes you over to this page for this top, and it's an affiliate link, but there is nothing within that first view where you're encouraged to swipe up that suggests that this is an affiliate link. The ASA would say that affiliate linking is a commercial relationship. The influencer will take a cut. The brand obviously benefits from it. So because of that, they have now said that they would expect that to be labelled with ad or hashtag ad. The strange thing at the moment is that ASA don't like the term affiliate. They don't think that many people understand what an affiliate is, or insufficient people understand what affiliate means. So they would prefer any type of affiliate link mechanism or affiliate links themselves to be labelled with affiliate. So another thing that they have rules upon here in the UK quite frequently is the non-disclosure that you're a brand ambassador. Now, for example, here you've got Olivia, who has stated that she's an ambassador in her bio on Instagram, but then she will produce posts such as this one here that don't talk about that brand relationship, but they do promote a product for the brand. It's not sufficient to leave that information to your bio. So every post where you're promoting that product has to be disclosed, and it has to be disclosed upfront clearly. It should be at the top of all of that text. It should be the first thing in there. It should say ad or hashtag ad, going for a skinny lip. Yes, it's a clear error, but it's one of those that's happening all the time because it's not an unreasonable assumption, I think, for many people that actually all of your viewers and all of your followers will understand you have this relationship. But the ASA have stated quite clearly that it's possible to come across an Instagram post without being a follower. It's possible to stumble across it, to link to it from something else, and never actually see the bio. So for that reason, these are exactly the type of things that need to be disclosed. Obviously, we're in a particularly unusual time, and I think it's something that, although lockdown, it may not be forever, and we will hopefully come out of it very soon, we need to address some of the specific issues that come up because of how the ASA are operating at this time, or because of some of the types of products that are being promoted during this time, which are very specific to lockdown and COVID-19. Or because purely there are certain commercial arrangements that are changing because of the difficulties being caused by lockdown. So in particular, what the ASA have seen a lot of are health claims related to COVID. And I had to think and a look around, and I spoke to the ASA about whether there was much to do in terms of this particular niche, outdoor sports or sports endurance type claims. And what it seems to be is, if there is anything that touches on COVID or any mistakes that are being made, it is to do with general feelings of health, increased immunity, or promoting products that suggest you might be healthier and therefore able to ward off potentially COVID-19. The ASA would say that those types of claims are verging on medicinal, which means that you shouldn't be making them unless you are a qualified medical practitioner. Now, obviously, the influencers that you're working with are unlikely to be GPs, and even if they are, it would be inappropriate for them to be making those types of claims on social media in that way for a product that potentially hasn't been tested under those claims. So it's just a really bad idea to make any types of claims that relate to coronavirus, COVID-19, during the current time. I mean, it probably goes without saying, and it's very kind of common sense advice. But even just inferring that, there's going to be some kind of increased immunity or health benefit that might imply preventing COVID-19 or treating it in any way, just a bad idea. So obviously, anything to do with social responsibility is key at the moment, and the ASA have published rulings relating to being socially responsible. It's one of their kind of vague rules that they like to talk about occasionally. Pre-COVID, it was often to do with safety or influencers acting rather foolishly in an ad, doing something that might be dangerous. Now, obviously, in the current climate, social responsibility is very much in terms of promoting good practice, not showing, for example, a party of people in a room, even though that might have been taken sort of weeks ago. You should probably be making very clear it's not something you're recommending within your ad. So yeah, it's just one of those things that should always be in the back of your mind as a brand or as an influencer, that sort of priorities have changed slightly, and that although the ASA are taking a somewhat softly approach and not going too hard on brands or influencers because they know it's a difficult time, they will come down quite hard if they think that you are exploiting the public in any way. So at the moment, what I have seen also are lots of competitions and an increase in competitions and giveaways. I did mention earlier that there are specific rules for these, but partly now I think this ties in with social responsibility as well, because some of the competitions I've seen talk about, in these hard times, I'm giving away $50 to whoever retweets this, or £50 to people who tag in a friend. On a certain level, that's okay. You can talk about hard times, and you can give away money. But what I would be careful is, as I said, to make sure you include all of the, the T's and C's and that type of thing. If it's about giving away products, what you need to be super careful of is that those products are available, and there are delays to delivery times, and it's not going to be acceptable to suggest that you can't give away a prize because you've not been able to get hold of it. So yes, the ASA will have some sympathy if this was a competition that was launched way before COVID-19 even started, or before we went into lockdown. But if you start a competition now, you haven't sourced the prize, or you're not certain you can get the prize, and then you turn around and say, well, we can't actually hand over that prize because it's supposed to be coming from China and there's a 12-week delay, don't expect too much sympathy from the ASA. That could well be an upheld ruling against you. In terms of contractual issues, this is quite difficult to talk about on a general level, But obviously there will be difficulties between brands and influencers at the moment in fulfilling contracts. It's a difficult one because, as I said, that I would always look at those on a case-by-case basis. Every contract's going to be different. Every contract's going to have different, for example, force majeure clauses, which are your get-out clause if something terrible goes wrong. So I couldn't say definitely whether you would have to complete every contract or what you would be liable for. But it's really important to look at it not just from the legal level, but from a common sense approach, partly because we're not going to be in lockdown forever. As a brand, if you want to continue to have a healthy, strong relationship with an influencer, you would want to think very carefully about whether you want to isolate them, partly on a personal, humane level, but also because of the power of social media. And I have seen influencers really, really pulling up brands who they felt haven't dealt with them fairly over contractual matters. That kind of links in quite nicely with reputational matters as well, because, as I said, everyone's trying their best right now, but if anyone feels like they're being exploited, or if an influencer feels like they're being exploited in any way, it's very easy right now to take to social media. There's, everyone's on social media much more than they were previously. So I think it's an important thing to consider when you are contracting with, making deals with influencers. It's always worth anyway checking out, auditing influencers to see if they are the types of influencers you want to work with, not just in terms of whether they've worked with your competitors before, or whether they use #ad even frequently, but just to see if they do align with your values. And I've always said that I think it's really important that you go back down to your brand's core values and have a look to see what those are, and see if they really do match up with an influencer's before going any further with that relationship. And obviously now more so than ever, with heightened almost tensions around influencers feeling uncomfortable about advertising at this time, sometimes I think it's really important that your brand very much aligns with that the influencer and their following. So just to conclude, really what I think is important to know at this time is to understand that, there are rules in the UK and across other countries for sponsorship, and to make sure that you are familiar with those and to use the tools available to you. So whether that's following me, because I produce videos on YouTube on what the various rules are, making sure that you've got some kind of fact sheet potentially that you could pass on to influencers if you're a brand, or if you're an influencer, making sure that you know what those rules are, or whether it's a case of, understanding exactly, the precise details of how, when and where to disclose your brand deals. I think it's really important, this education part of it, to be fully aware of what your responsibilities are. The ASA haven't stopped doing their ASA thing during lockdown. They're still investigating. The CMA is certainly still investigating. All the bodies are still doing what they do. So there's no kind of let up at the moment for anybody. I've talked about the common brand mistakes, and at the moment, a lot of it is to do with affiliates. It is to do with Instagrams, very much to do with live streaming as well. Lots of mistakes being made. I think everyone's feeling quite comfortable in their home environment, feeling like they're away from work, live streaming, chatting away, and forgetting that there are 20,000 people listening, or deliberately dropping in brand mentions while they're live streaming and forgetting that they need to be disclosing those. Legal and contractual concerns we talked about, just being really mindful of everybody's responsibilities. And especially to do with COVID-19, being very careful of any type of health claims. So those are pretty much everything that all the advice that I can give right at the moment, without going into too much detail on anything.
Great, thank you very much, Rupa. That was really amazing and very, very helpful. I hope everyone else found that helpful as well. So how we can help, obviously, Freestak, we can put you in touch with legal advisors and people like Rupa and her team to help you out in terms of any more questions you have or further advice. We can actually help you with existing ambassador and content creator campaigns. We can obviously create other campaigns for you with our network of 1,800 pre-vetted endurance and outdoor experts and influencers. And we can obviously put you in touch with quality content creators to help you communicate to your target customers. So, and for a limited time, we do have 50% off if you sign up to just 1 month, and you can actually access 50% off for 3 months. So, yeah, and that's obviously during this period to help you guys all out in this climate. So, yeah, if we go on to the next slide. Yeah, so if you do have any questions, you can contact myself, Amy at freestak.com, or Rupa at #ad.co.uk. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope you found that as interesting as I did.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. See ya.